Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Film for Fans podcast, the podcast from movie fans for movie fans. I'm your host, Ryan Dunlevy. That's my co-host, Rob Dunham.
Congratulations, Eagles fans.
Oh, yeah. It is victory time, man. Celebrations.
It was not a victory. It was a beatdown.
It was a beatdown. It was an absolute beatdown. I was actually irrationally angry at the 2 touchdowns they gave up at the end of the game when nobody cared, because it's not going to look like the level of beatdown that it actually was.
Yeah. However, this is not an Andy Reid ordering off the Denny's menu podcast.
It is not. It is not the Eagles ruining a potential Travis Kelce proposal either. It is a movie podcast. And we have an excellent podcast for you. We will go over the latest box office update. We are going to talk about Captain America and give you a little bit of a preview of that. We're going to review the Oscar nominations because we have to, because we're a movie podcast and for some reason. Anyway, we'll get to that. And of course, we will give you our watch list. We'll also throw in there movies that we each should have watched but haven't, just for fun. But let's start out with the box office update. And we haven't done one of these in a few weeks. So we get to talk about Dogman being a 2-week
This
number
week's
one.
box office is brought to you by depression.
Yes. Dogman has been the number one movie at the box office for 2 consecutive weeks. Yes, it has. It did.
That's rough.
Yes, it's. Jeez, I knew it was coming and just couldn't stop it. Yeah, 13.7 million for Dogman in week 2.
I'd rather cut half my body off and literally be sewn to a dog than watch the movie Dogman. Which is the plot of the movie Dogman.
It is the plot.
If you don't know.
Now it finished with 13.7 in week 2. At number 1 in the box office. However, it dropped 61.9% from week 1 to week 2. So that's a massive drop off. It has a 2-week total of $54 million, which is way more than it should have. 2 theaters added Dogman from week 1 to week 2. It's very strange.
I need to get
so there were 2 theaters that are like, yeah, we got to get in on that Dogman action.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Give the people what they want.
Yeah. Number 2 and 3 are new movies in the box office this past weekend. Heart Eyes did 8.5 million. That was a horror film. Interesting note on this one. When I went to the theaters this previous week, a guy came out and said to the attendant in the theater, he's like, you're showing the wrong movie. We're supposed to see Heart Eyes, and this is not Heart Eyes. So apparently the local Regal actually ran the wrong movie in one of their theaters this weekend. But Heart Eyes did 8.5 in its debut weekend. Love Hurts did the exact opposite, 5.8 million in its debut. Number 4 was Mufasa the Lion King in its 8th week in the box office. It's been out for 2 months now. It did 3.9 million. It is up to $235.2 million.
Wow.
So good showing there for Mufasa. Number 5 was Companion in its 2nd week in the box office. It did 3 million. That's a 67.5% drop from week 1 to week 2. So that's a pretty steep drop. It has a 2-week total of $15.4 million. Anything stand out to you right there in the box office?
Like I said, it's just not very exciting.
Yeah.
And
really
number
would.
2 and 3 are both Valentine's Day movies they'll certainly not make very much money next week. Might not even be off top 5, but maybe they will be, because I don't know what else will be in the top 5.
I mean, you obviously know what number 1 will be, but outside of that, it's like, yeah. I did see Love Hurts. And so we can talk about that in our watch list segment. But needless to say, there's not going to be a ton of people coming. There's not going to be a sudden resurgence of that.
Heart Eyes is on my list to see. I did not see it, but I did see Companion. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
To our watch list too.
Nice. Overall box office down 37% from the previous week. So not a surprise there. Not a whole lot out there. in terms of movies in the box office. However, that seems to likely to change this coming week. And that's because we have the first Marvel movie in a while, and it is Captain America Brave New World. And Captain America Brave New World, of course, stars Anthony Mackie as Captain America, as well as Harrison Ford as the president. Liv Tyler is in this one as well. And there's going to be some interesting callbacks in this movie, things that we thought had been dead and long buried in the Marvel Cinematic Universe are coming back to life.
So I am very curious how this will do, because this is kind of the first. I think we can both agree Deadpool Wolverine is kind of an abnormality. It's kind of outside of the standard Marvel universe.
It has its own realm of fandom.
Yeah.
That is not dependent on the rest of the MCU.
This will be the first movie that has a tie to the original Marvel Cinematic Universe in a while.
Yeah.
And they have not been doing super well when it comes to that lately.
They have not.
So my question is, are we going to see the fan fatigue response to this movie, or are we going to see a hopeful response based on what Deadpool and Wolverine was, or what's going to happen here?
I think there are two things going for this movie. One, I do think they've done a decent job of just backing off the movies and not releasing. I mean, they didn't release hardly anything in terms of the cinematic universe lately. So I think easing back on that is an advantage for this one, because it does feel like the first one to come out in a while that's fully connected to the MCU. So I think that it has that going for it. It does have some goodwill after Deadpool and Wolverine. I think that restored a little bit of faith in the MCU. Although, like I said earlier, that has its own independent fan base. Secondly, I think a lot of people have viewed the Captain America movies as the strongest, or as, if not the strongest, one of the strongest series within the MCU. The Captain America ones have typically been. So I think you're not going to they don't have the ups and downs of the Thor movies, for instance.
So if you had made, and I have not looked at anything, if you looked at anything projection wise,
I have not looked at any.
So if you had to make a blind projection for opening weekend for Captain America,
I would say 90 to 110 million. That's my range for that.
Okay, I was actually going to go lower. I was going to go 75.
Okay,
which I still think is pretty good. It's a pretty high number.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be way lower than the heydays of Marvel. But I think it would, given what some of the ones they've done recently, that would be a solid number, even if it was 75.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to do way better than any of the DC movies have done, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's going to do better than any of the Sony Marvel movies have done. Hey, by the way, did you know that Kraven the Hunter already came out and it's gone? It's
yeah.
I've looked, so I think it made less than $10 million. It was not great.
It did not do well, yes. And it really never looked like it was going to. It just wasn't one that really screamed that it was going to do well.
So it had a budget of 110 to $130 million, and worldwide made 62 million. And most of that was not in the United States.
Yeah.
But less than half its projected budget at the box office. That's not a good way to make money.
It's not a good way to make money. But leading into this, if you are, let's say, a casual MCU fan, where you've seen most of the movies and you have seen the trailer for Captain America Brave New World, and you're like, what? That's probably because you haven't kept up with the millions and millions of hours of content between the movies and the show content. And so you might say, do I even need to or want to see this movie? I think this is one of the negative things going for it
Mhm.
is the amount of things you would have had to have seen in order for this movie to make sense. So I thought we'd give you a little bit of a breakdown on some of this stuff, so that you know, now that you have like a few days in order to be able to catch up on anything in order to be able to see this movie, or if you don't see it opening weekend, you can see it later and catch up on some of the stuff. So I thought we'd share with you like things that you should see in order to be able to make sense of this
And
particular
I
movie.
would think that if you were a fan of the Marvel Universe, there are some things in here we can agree
Mm-hmm.
you've probably seen
Yeah.
and probably remember stuff from.
Yeah.
Like the Captain America movies themselves,
Yeah.
and Avengers Infinity War and
Mm-hmm.
Avengers Endgame. You've probably seen those. But there are a couple things in here that were a little surprising,
Mm-hmm.
or things that we thought might have been forgotten or have been blatantly ignored
Yeah.
by Marvel for. So the first movie I'm thinking about came out almost 20 years ago and has
Yeah.
virtually been ignored since.
Yeah.
And that movie is,
And this is the where I wanted to start here.
yeah.
One of the things that you should pay attention to, or that you should revisit ahead of this movie, is 2008's The Incredible Hulk. And that is fascinating because, like I said, once this movie came out and Ed Norton was Bruce Banner, and there was a fallout between Marvel and Ed Norton over how the movie was edited and cut and what the final version ended up being. So Ed Norton opted out of any of future movies, and they replaced him as as the Incredible Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark Ruffalo took over and has been in the Incredible Hulk ever since. And basically, this movie has been memory holed by Disney forever. Like to the point where it wasn't on Disney Plus. It was not listed amongst their movies as part of the MCU. And they just mysteriously, it's back in there now.
And there's one name in the cast of the new Captain America movie that brings that connection, and that name, Ryan.
Liv Tyler.
So if you are a fan of the superhero movies, the Marvel movies, and you saw that name, you would know instantly.
Mm-hmm.
What my initial reaction was, what my second reaction was, she's playing the same person, right? Because I was like, they wouldn't just throw her in there to be somebody completely different. But yes, it is the same character.
And here's the other connection. The Thaddeus Ross was in this movie was played by William Hurt, and he was the obsessed military leader who was trying to hunt down Bruce Banner. That character is back, and that character is Harrison Ford is now that character, and that character is now the president of the United States. So they are bringing back basically the main villain from the Incredible Hulk and Bruce Banner's then girlfriend back into this movie, who was the daughter of Thaddeus Ross, if I'm correct, if I remember correctly. So those two characters are back. They were essential characters to this movie that Marvel memory hold for almost 2 decades. And they are going to play a central figure in this particular upcoming movie, which is really fascinating.
And I think it's probably long enough of a separation that people are not going to get caught up on the two different actors playing the character. Depending on your viewpoint of what makes an actor good, I think you could make an argument for either of the two being better as an actor. But I think there's not really an argument for the statement that Harrison Ford is the more populist of the two actors, the more well-known. So will that play in his favor, taking over this character, or will that give people an issue?
I think it's enough because of what their treatment of the Incredible Hulk. I think it's almost a blank slate character at this point.
I'm gonna be honest. I was like 5 seconds ago old when I found out that Harrison Ford was the same character.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I found out when I was reading up on this list of things you should watch ahead of time. And so I knew about the Liv Tyler connection, and I knew that they were obviously revisiting that. But that was a surprise to me that they went that far as to include these characters in there. So, yeah, it's fascinating that they're revisiting this.
Yeah. There are a couple other things on this list that are newer, that that stood out to me. One that I would say people should definitely watch, and one that I watched once and never felt the need to watch again, but apparently it's going to be tied into this movie. And I thought after how spectacularly it failed that it was not going to be tied into anything in the future. Because originally, when we're talking about the movie The Eternals, originally that was supposed to be like kind of centerpiece of the next wave as they went forward, and it just did not connect with people.
No.
In any way.
No.
And so they kind of just like gave up on it. And yet apparently there's a major part of the storyline from the end of the Eternals that's going to be part of the beginning of the new Captain America movie. So we'll see if there's
I don't know if that means any of the other characters are coming back, but yeah.
Because if any of the other characters come back, people's reactions are going to be, who is that?
Now, the main thing you need to be aware of, and the thing that basically everyone is saying, like, if you can watch only one thing ahead of this movie to prepare you, you have to watch The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And that's the Disney Plus show.
Yeah, and that is a series.
That is a series. It's a short series on Disney Plus, and this is what basically sets the table between the end of Infinity Wars Endgame, the end of Avengers Endgame, and where the Captain America character starts out at the beginning of this movie. All that journey, a lot of that journey takes place in Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
And I think that I would recommend this highly because it will show you that it wasn't as simple as Captain America saying to Sam, I want you to be the next Captain America. And he became the next Captain America, because that's not what happened. It's not what happened in the comics. They did a good job of presenting that in the show, that it actually went to someone else for a while, and that did not go well. Actually, I think Wyatt Russell, is Kurt Russell's son, is a very, very good villain in Falcon and Winter Soldier. And I would highly recommend watching that show if you have Disney Plus or know someone who can give you access to it. It's not super long. I think it's like 6 or 8 episodes. It's pretty short. But it's well filmed, it's well acted, and I think the writing does a good job of setting up Brave New World. And I think that I'm very interested in how Brave New World is written, because are they going to write it in a way that it's not confusing to people who it's their first interaction with the universe, or are they going to write it in such a way that you have to have all of this knowledge?
Yeah.
And I mean, we've talked about that before at length about sci-fi. You have two ends of the spectrum. You can either dumb it down so far that it becomes like just stilted and lame, because you're hand feeding everything to people, or you can make it so hard to access because of pre-knowledge you have to have, or just general understanding of how things operate, that it's almost impossible for anyone to grasp it. So where do they come in on that front? Because every movie, no matter what the movie is, you have to determine as the writer and director what the access point for your audience is. And I think, I mean, we've talked at length about the fact that Christopher Nolan has been really good at this. And it's one of the reasons why he's been so successful, because he gives people an opportunity to think for themselves, but also gives them enough information to understand what they're thinking about.
Well, and I think one of the problems is, we talked about this a number of times, where one of the dangers where you're doing things where you have some of the stuff exists in the realm of movies, some of the stuff exists in the realm of like streaming TV stuff, TV type episode things, is when you basically exist in two different mediums. Not everyone crosses over to both sets of mediums. So how much content, how much stakes do you want to place in the streaming thing that it needs to tie back into the movies, at risk of, making it to the point where nobody will tune into your future movies because they haven't watched the TV shows. On the same time, if the TV shows don't connect at all, what's the point in watching them? Why is anyone going to watch them if they don't matter? So it's kind of a catch-22 when you're going back and forth between mediums. But that's what it is. So I think the most important thing, if you want to get ahead of this, is to watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier on Disney Plus. Obviously, if you want to revisit any of the other Captain America movies to give you kind of a background on the character and who the character is. Also, if you want to revisit Endgame, Infinity Wars, or Avengers, Infinity Wars, and Endgame, kind of gives you the kind of end of the previous iteration of that character and like what happened in that. That will work as well. But yeah, probably the things that you need to revisit the most are Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the original Incredible Hulk, and the Eternals, because those are probably the things you have not for the most part. Okay. Anything else on that one?
No, sir.
All right. So let's move on to Oscar nominations. So unfortunately, the Oscars came around again this year.
Somebody has to win the awards because they happen every year.
Apparently, they have to have them every single year for some reason. We've talked about this a number of times, but my growing disdain for the Oscars just continues to escalate almost every single year. And I will get into specifics about that. But in the meantime, they are popular. People do care about them. They still do hold weight, more weight than they should, given what the Academy actually does with them. But it is important to go over and see where we're at. We talked in our review a couple of weeks ago about how the fact it was, in my opinion, not a great year for movies overall. And we both kind of looked at it like, what are they going to even nominate?
Yeah.
And so we're going to go through and we're going to give you some of the highlights from the main categories. Do you want to start with the actor ones or do you want to start with the best picture?
Sure.
Actors?
Actors.
All right. So we'll start with actors in a leading role. So the nominees for actors in a leading role: Adrian Brody for The Brutalist, Timothy Chalamet for Complete Unknown, Coleman Domingo for Sing Sing, Ray Fiennes for Conclave, and Sebastian Stan for The Apprentice. Thoughts?
Do you think Donald Trump is cheering for Sebastian Stan to win because he played him, or cheering against him because they made him look bad?
I don't know. Trump's likes a winner. I don't know.
So I have one question on this list because you are the only one of us two who have seen the movie, and I know that overall you had issues with the way the movie proceeded and ended.
Yeah.
But did Ray Fiennes give an best actor worthy performance in the movie?
The movie was very well acted. So I think Ray Fiennes, he was typical Ray Fiennes. Ray Fiennes always does well. And so I think given the status of everything this year, I'm okay with Ray Fiennes being in the actor in a leading role for this. It was well acted.
So my other question would be, and this also ties into where they went with actress in a leading role and supporting role. The movie was not really billed as like Ray Fiennes, and it was like Ray Fiennes, Stanley Tucci, John Lithgow, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Was he dominant in the cast in a way that makes him worthy of being the one who is chosen?
He is the centerpiece around which the rest of the movie orbits, as it were. You spend more time with him, and you kind of follow him around through most of the movie. So yes, I would say he's definitively the lead actor, but a lot of the other actors play substantial roles in the film. So, and I think a lot of the other actors did an excellent job in this one. So I think the acting was very strong.
So none of the other actors were nominated for best supporting actor. Was there one that stood out to you from the movie who you think would have been deserving?
If it were anyone, I would say it would be Stanley Tucci, probably, or John Lithgow. But I'm okay. They were both good. I would have been fine with one of them getting a nomination.
My comment on this is that the Academy loves the biopic musician. So if you are in like the biopic movie of the year, you're probably going to get nominated if you do a good job. and I thought he did a fantastic job. I am pleased that Timothy was nominated for this. I don't think he's going to win. I think like a lot of the categories in this, we're going to see the art house movies like The Brutalist and Anora and Sing Sing are going to be probably the ones who win the awards.
Yeah,
because I feel like, and we'll see this as we go through, that many of the nominations were made because people actually wanted to see them in the nominations, like popular people. But that doesn't mean they're actually really being considered.
it's as we'll get to it. A lot of this is like we want to make a statement that has nothing to do with movies, and there's a lot of that in the Oscars this year. It seems like the disconnect between the average moviegoer and the Academy is never, I would argue, has never been as wide as it is this year. And I think you're going to see that in almost every single category. As you look up here and you look at the movies, and there's only a couple of movies anywhere on this list that people would have seen. I would say 4, maybe 5 movies for anyone nominated in any of these categories that the average person might have seen. That's a problem. That's a real problem. I have more on that later. So actors in a supporting role. Yura Borisov for Anora, Kieran Culkin for Real Pain, Edward Norton for A Complete Unknown, Guy Pearce for The Brutalist, Jeremy Strong for The Apprentice.
So again, I'm pleased to see Edward Norton nominated for A Complete Unknown because I thought he's very deserving of that, and I haven't seen any of the other ones.
Yep. I honestly, there's a couple of movies. We'll get to this when we get to the main best picture with. There's a couple of movies that I actually want to see on here.
And you may have an opportunity depending on where you are. Because usually before the awards, Regal and a couple other cinemas will find a way to screen all of the main award nominees.
Yeah, and you've seen I've seen a few of them here or there.
Yeah.
The one on this list that I was really actually wanted to see when it came out and just didn't get around to it because it wasn't in very long was A Real Pain. It actually looked like something I would be interested in watching. But again, the disconnect between the average moviegoer and actors nominated in this is just extreme. And we get to even more when we get to the actress in the leading roles. That just continues. Cynthia Erivo got nominated for Wicked. Carla Sofia Gascon, Amelia Perez, which is highly controversial. Which maybe we'll get to. Maybe we'll just, save that. Mikey Madsen for Anora, Demi Moore for The Substance, Fernanda Torres for I'm Still Here.
So Glinda is very disappointed in this because she's obviously the star of Wicked, the Good Witch, and she was nominated for Best Supporting Actress, which I find really funny.
Yeah, since you saw Wicked, how do you parse that out? Because they both got nominated, one for supporting and one for leading.
So I would say that
is that an accurate depiction?
Yeah, I would say that I think Ariana Grande's character would think that she was the main actor in the movie, but she wasn't. So I think the Academy got it right because it could very easily you could make an argument for either. But the story is really Elphaba, the Wicked Witch's story. The book is called Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch. And it all comes out of that story from her origin to how she navigates the world, starts to understand the world, and how she fights against what she perceives as the injustice in the world. And it is really her story. As much as it is because it's kind of a twisting or retelling of, well, not really retelling because there wasn't really a telling of what happened other than the Wizard of Oz. Yeah. When you come to the Wizard of Oz, it's a fully formed world and everything is set and there's good and evil and there's no explanation for where it came from.
Yeah.
And I do like how Wicked does that. And I do think that they got it right with who is nominated for Best Actress. However, much like the other categories, I think that there's zero chance that either one wins the award in their category. Yeah. And I saw a commercial for the Oscars just the other day, and like 50% of the commercial was shots from Wicked. And it just made me think, like, the only reason they're doing this is because they want people to watch the
they want people to watch the show, even though none of the movies that they've seen are going to be any part of this show.
And Wicked might win like the best score or something.
Yeah,
like some what they would call a throwaway award.
Yeah,
and not any of the major awards.
Yeah.
I will say that I've not seen the movie, but I've heard really, really good things about The Substance. And that's more of a like thriller horror.
I've heard that Demi Moore did a good job in that. Yeah. I've heard Mikey Madsen did a good job in Anora. Yeah. Maybe I'll talk more about Amelia Perez when we get to the best picture nominations, because I have thoughts. Actress in a supporting role: Monica Barbaro for A Complete Unknown, Ariana Grande for Wicked, Felicity Jones for Brutalist, Isabella Rossellini for Conclave, and Zoe Saldana for Amelia Perez.
So, having not seen the movie again, so Conclave is based on this large grouping of like cardinals and stuff who are choosing a new pope.
Yes.
So, what is Isabella Rossellini's character?
She is a nun. She plays a nun. She plays in the office. She is a nun, basically like a worker in the office of the Pope. And she plays a role in, I'll describe it without giving stuff away. She plays a role in some of the back and forth, like the Cardinals have to eat, and there's people providing meals for the Cardinals. There's moments where they're having to get information, so there are other people involved who are not just the Cardinals. And so she is one of those. She plays a key role in certain scenes along these lines. I thought she was fine. I don't know that. I think it's more people. They like Conclave and wanted to nominate people from Conclave. I think that's more of it. I wouldn't have said based on her performance that was a potentially Oscar-worthy performance. But she was fine. Like, I don't think it's a.
And I would say with the one that I saw Wicked, obviously, and Complete Unknown. You saw it?
Yes, I saw Complete Unknown.
I would actually say, I think Timothy did a fantastic job in the movie, but I think maybe the best like pure musicianship talent shown was by Monica Barbaro.
Oh, I thought she was awesome in this movie. Yeah,
she's a fantastic singer.
Yeah,
and it's not just the singing; it's the ability to convey emotion.
Yeah,
in the singing, and I thought she did a really good job of that.
Well, and she did an awesome job of acting, because Bob Dylan was kind of a jerk, especially to her, and so she doesn't necessarily put up with that.
Yeah,
and so how she plays off of Timothy and the characters back and forth, she really does do a good job of standing out.
Yeah,
and being her own character and being memorable in that way.
Yeah.
And so I thought she did an excellent job. So I think she is perfectly worthy of being nominated in this category.
All right, we'll do that next.
All right, so let's do directing. We'll do directing, then we'll finish out with Best Picture. So director nominations: Sean Baker for Anora, Brady Corbett for The Brutalist, James Mangold for A Complete Unknown, Jacques Audier for Amelia Perez, and Carolee Farguet for The Substance.
That may or may not be how her name is pronounced.
That is probably not. I've never heard her name pronounced in my life. So
we do have a pronunciation specialist who listens to the podcast, so she might be able to correct us.
Yep. Yeah. It's hard to say anything about. What you're seeing a ton of repeats along these. It's clearly they're like here are the movies we feel like nominating, and then they'll just get everything.
Yeah.
And that's, you see a real aggregate. There's not a single director on here who we haven't seen another nomination in another category.
Yeah.
So what you're seeing is they have a few movies that the Academy decided they were going to nominate, and they just nominated them for everything.
Mm-hmm. So I wonder if that means that we'll see like the major awards get split between a bunch, or if there will be like this groundswell behind. Because usually what happens is that there does end up being a movement behind a particular movie, and it ends up bringing home a majority of the awards. Does that happen for The Brutalist or Nora? Or
I don't think there's any way, because it has to be AstroTurf, because there's nothing about any one of these movies that's going to generate a groundswell.
Yeah.
There really isn't. There's nothing about them that's going to say, oh, no, it has to be this one. And then there's just this rising tide that moves and sweeps that. The only exception to that, which we'll get to with the directing, is if they just decide to say, forget any integrity in terms of like caring about whether or not this was actually a good movie or not, and just decide to make political statements.
Mm-hmm.
Then you could see something like that happen. Yeah. Which, I mean, they've certainly gone that direction with their nominations. So it's possible, I guess, they choose to do that. But I don't think they will. But I think you're going to see them very split. All right, let's move to Best Picture nominations. So there's 10 pictures nominated for Best Picture, which is kind of hard to believe because there's probably barely 10 good movies this year. Certainly not 10 worthy. But the nominations were Anora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Amelia Perez, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, The Substance, and Wicked. All right. Let's start out with this. First question. How many of these movies have you seen?
I have seen A Complete Unknown, Dune Part 2, and Wicked.
I have seen A Complete Unknown, Conclave, and Dune Part 2. Now, second question. Based on what you know about these movies, how many of the other movies on this list do you have a real interest in seeing? Not just seeing them because they were nominated, but an actual interest based on the substance of the movie.
I would say 3 max.
Yeah, I would go 2.
For me, it's Anora, The Brutalist, and The Substance. Out of those 3, The Brutalist would probably be my top, and the only reason being that I think Adrian Brody and Guy Pearce are really good actors.
Agreed.
So I am interested in seeing what they did.
Yeah.
But it's also over 3 hours long.
Yeah.
So I don't know how realistic it's going to be for me to see this movie in the theater.
Yeah.
Like I said, there'll probably be an opportunity to see it before the awards, but I just don't know if it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Out of the 3, probably The Substance is going to be the most accessible for me to see, and it will be in my like general area of movies that I like to see. Anora, I would say, is more in a category of I feel like I should see it.
Yeah. More
than I necessarily am like dying to see it.
Yeah.
Like I'd be okay not seeing it, but I also kind of feel like if I don't see it, I'm gonna feel like I did miss something, because obviously from when it came out, there was a lot of talk about it, about how good it was. So I would have to think there's something behind that. It's not just made up.
Yeah.
The trailers did look to me like there was something there. But again, it'd be having to invest the time to sit down and watch it.
Sure. Yeah. All right. So my first mini rant here. It annoys me every single year, and there's usually 1 or 2 movies every single year that do not actually debut until they've already been nominated for Best Picture. And that seems like just unbelievably gaming the system.
Yeah.
Ridiculous, terrible. Brutalist is this movie this year. It did not come out for anybody to see this movie until January. It was already nominated for Best Picture before it came out. Like, you cannot tell me It's a best picture from the previous year when the film did not come out until the next year. Stop doing this. They do this every single year, where at least one of the movies, if not multiple movies. Now, last year there was 2 or 3. Now, some of them were good movies, but they did not debut until well into the next year. Stop doing this. That's not a movie for the previous year.
Right.
If nobody had a chance to see it, it doesn't get nominated for Best Picture. Like, stop doing that. I'm tired of that.
I mean, you're proving your elitism at that point because you're nominating something that you had
that only you had the chance to see.
Yes.
On top of which, you are gaming the system because the only reason people are going to see this movie is because they know it's been nominated. It's not coming out on its own and letting people react to it in and of itself. The only reason people are going to it is because it's been nominated. If you put out The Brutalist at any other point in the year and didn't say anything about it, nobody would have gone to see it. Now, that does, according to the Academy, like, that doesn't matter whatsoever as to whether or not the film gets nominated anymore. Whether anybody actually sees it or not doesn't matter. But it's driving me nuts that more and more of these pictures who are winning major awards never came out until the year after. And, like, I'm tired of them doing that. My second thing is every year sometimes it's not every year. Significant amount of years, the Academy decides that they're just going to not care about quality of movies and they're just going to nominate movies to make statements. And like, never more has it just been more apparent than the Amelia Perez thing. Nobody likes this movie.
I don't even know what this movie is.
I watched a little bit of it and I'm like, this is awful, and turned it off. Like, I have no intention of going back and continuing to watch. The critics don't like it. The audiences don't like it. It's nominated specifically to make a statement. It got 13 Oscar nominations. That's as many as Lord of the Rings got. So according to the Oscars, this movie is on par with Lord of the Rings. And that's insane. They're insane. If you want to make statements, go into politics, go into journalism. Do not disrespect your art form by continuing to do this. Stop. Enough already. There I go. There. I said what I had to say about that.
I'm probably never going to end up seeing it, so I'm going to take your word for
it. It's so bad.
I have a couple of thoughts on
give me
other categories here that we didn't hit on.
Hit on
it. One that's near, probably the category that's most near and dear to our hearts, I would say, based on our discussions over the years of cinematography.
Yeah.
And I am very, very happy that Dune Part 2 was nominated because it is well deserving, and Nosferatu also, because that was one of the best shot movies I've seen in a while, and it was really well done with black and white and like muted color, and there was just a lot of really good choices in that movie when it came to how it was shot.
Yeah.
It's another reason why I feel like I really do want to see The Brutalist, because if a movie is nominated for cinematography, I kind of like to see if it's worthy of that.
I think The Brutalist looks like an interesting movie. I think, like you're saying, the lead actors in this are great actors, and I usually like to see them in whatever they're in. And it does look like it has interesting cinematography. So in and of itself, I would be interested in seeing this movie. Like I said, I just hate the fact that they bring out a movie the next year and then say, oh, this is the best picture from last year.
I'm also pleased to see Wicked nominated for Best Score, although it is essentially the exact same score from the musical. So it's won awards before in different formats, but they did add a couple things to the original Broadway score for the first act, and I'm a big fan of the music in general for the show. So.
I wonder how the Academy looks at that, because, for instance, we talked about this a number of weeks ago. Hans Zimmer was not eligible to be nominated for Dune Part 2 score because they felt it carried over too much of his Dune Part 1 score, and there wasn't enough, in their minds, enough original music to be able to count as an original soundtrack. So I wonder how they view that, given that a lot of the music was very similar to, but that's a completely different art form. So I don't know if they take that into account whatsoever. I I think for me, like one thing I'll highlight is I think it's very clear that Dune Part Two was the best movie of last year, and there's no chance it wins.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no chance it wins, and I'm like, that's the stuff that just starts, but like eating me up when they keep doing that.
We're waiting for Dune Messiah, and then
Yeah,
we'll give it its award. Maybe.
no chance. No chance. All right. Well, that's the Oscar nominations, and given the time frame here, I think we'll skip the movies that we should have already seen, and we'll put that.
I think we kind of already talked about it
for next week
in our discussion.
Yeah,
a little bit. So.
And to be clear, like I will probably end up seeing more of the Oscar nominations than I want to, just because like feeling like having to do some level of due diligence.
And I will say, just to push back a little bit, or to say to the Academy's credit, like. I think it's very likely like a movie like The Fall last year, maybe neither of us would have seen if we didn't hear like some of the one about the the foreign film.
Like
there are some.
Well, actually, I actually did see that ahead of time.
I mean, there are some movies that like I would not have any connection to or understanding.
I'm fine with that in certain circumstances. If the rationale is the movie is just that good, and that one was, the movie was unbelievably exceptional. That was an incredible movie. It was one of the best movies I've seen this decade. That has not been typically the case with these. And so, yes, and I'm fine. And like, that's one of the reasons why they expanded from 5 movies to 10 movies.
Has anyone seen the movie Coda yet?
Coda?
Yeah, that won the Oscar a couple years ago, and no one had seen it. No one has seen it since.
Yeah. All right, we'll finish out with our watch list movies we watched over the last week. Rob, what'd you watch?
I saw Companion in the theater. With Jack Quaid. Very interesting take on what happens when AI goes haywire. Because AI takes the form of a companion robot. Who is not a sex bot. Well, not primarily. It's just like to be a companion, to be someone who's there with you, to understand you, it develops its own personality. I think going into it, I might have liked it a little bit more if I didn't know that was going to happen, because they do a good job of masking it until it actually is revealed that she's a robot. It turns out she's not the only robot either, which makes it interesting. Some cool twists in there. I thought it was perfectly serviceable movie. I didn't think it was great, but I liked it. Not like top in I wouldn't even call it a horror movie. So I keep a horror movie journal, and it didn't make it into the journal because to me it was much more of a like sci-fi thriller type movie. And I think in that genre it did a good job, but for reference, like Ex Machina was way better. So and kind of similar themes as that movie.
Fair enough.
I also saw Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them again with my kids because they wanted to watch it for family movie night. And I like the movie. I think it kind of gets a little bit of an unfair rap just because it's not Harry Potter, but it was never going to be Harry Potter. Like just because it's in the same universe doesn't mean it's going to be the same level.
I didn't think they were bad. I just found them utterly forgettable. And when the other movies were just amazing, like utterly forgettable is kind of almost the worst thing you can do.
You just got obliviated and you didn't know
it. Perhaps.
So that's what I saw this week.
Okay. I, of course, since we last recorded, I saw Groundhog Day, of course, because I had to. It was February 2nd, and it's one of my favorite movies of all time. I continue to insist it's one of the best character development movies of all time. I saw Love Hurts in the theaters, and Ke Huy Quan is just an awesome actor. He's great. He has that lovable, likable character down pat. So he continues to be that same type of guy. This was not a good movie. It was not. It really wasn't. There's no discernible story. The acting from the good characters in this movie is pretty good. The acting from the bad characters is horribly awful. And
how was Marshawn Lynch?
Marshawn Lynch was pretty funny. I'm not gonna lie. Marshawn Lynch was good. I like Marshawn Lynch. He was the best of the bad guys from that standpoint. He was just funny. There is an awesome cameo from one of the property brothers in this one.
Oh man,
the realtor property brother guy is a cameo in this one. Great. But there's moments where it's entertaining. There's moments where it's fun, but it just isn't a good movie. So Flight Risk in theaters. So that one was just like
from the director of Hacksaw Ridge, we won't name.
So it's just an entertaining movie. You know, it's no frills. It's short, as was Love Hurts. They're both under an hour and a half. So they're good. You get in there, get your entertainment, get out. And that's what it is. It's an entertaining movie. It all takes place in this plane where you realize that the pilot is not who he's supposed to be. The downside of this is you just keep saying, just shoot him the whole time. Like, why don't you just shoot him? Like, what are you doing screwing around here? Just shoot him. And that's pretty much your reaction to the whole movie. But I mean, it's entertaining. It's, you go to the theater, you want to see a story, you want to see entertainment. It's fine. I did also see one. I revisited Mystic River. I saw Mystic River in like 2004, like right after it came out, and I'd never seen it again. Like, didn't remember almost anything about it. It's dark.
Yeah,
it's a
hard movie to watch.
It is. It's a hard movie to watch. It's not one I feel like there's a reason, and now it turns out there's a reason. Like, I didn't revisit it for 20 years. It's well directed. It's well acted. It's just like,
it's one of the movies that you leave walking away from it just feeling not great about the world.
Yeah, you just feel grungy.
Yeah,
and it's like I don't love movies like that because I primarily go to be entertained, and like I don't love leaving a movie feeling like that. So yeah, Mystic River. All right, that is all the time we have. Thank you for tuning into Film for Fans. And make sure you visit filmforfans.com and like, subscribe, and tell your friends about the podcast. Until next time, enjoy the movies.